What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some MMA DFS picks. DraftKings UFC Vegas 50, Ankalaev versus Santos. Lineup advice, best bets, tips, strategies, FanDuel, DraftKings, sports betting, whatever you need. We are here to help you out for the UFC fights on Saturday night on March 12th. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, joined by Jake the Steak, owner of MMADFS.com, writer of the Daily Plug at OccupyFantasy.com. Jake, what's up?
What's up, man? Good to be here.
As always, we're bouncing back from last week to talk about this 14-fight card. What we normally do in these videos, if you're not aware, if you're new, we talk about the main event and what it means for DFS and betting purposes. We discuss any newcomers, what their backgrounds are, and what their expectations are for their UFC debut. A couple fights you want to target in DFS, and then we'll close it out with our stream parlay and a couple bets that we do like. Before we get started, make sure you are subscribed here on YouTube. That'll get you notified whenever we go live, upload any new videos here on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up if you like the UFC content and want to see more of it. Any questions, you can always comment on the YouTube video below, or you can hop on our Discord server, click the join button below this video, chat with me, Jake, tilt the fights with all of us on Saturday nights. So Jake, Ankalaev, Santos, you had a take early in the week. I know you were breaking down this fight a lot. It took you a while. Just trying to find different angles on what it means for DFS. What'd you come out of the lab with?
Yeah, man. So I don't think it's necessarily a hot take, but Thiago Santos's fights are not that exciting lately.
True. It's very true. That's what we pay you the big bucks for.
Yeah, it took a few days to figure that one out, but breaking this one down. I mean, Magomed Ankalaev is an absolute world beater. I mean, this guy is a future champion. I mean, I think we're going to see him and Yari Prochaska, whatever, fighting in the near future, potentially for a belt, after Glover hands it over. But I think Ankalaev is, I think he's basically a lock here to win. And, obviously Santos is now going to get like a fourth round knockout or something. But I think that's the general consensus as well. So, I mean, it's hard to really find an angle in this fight because, Ankalaev still projects to be a popular play. Normally we see the main 5-round favorite, somewhere in the 40 to 50% range. He's a little bit lower on that range, kind of projecting in the low 40s right now. And then Santos is projecting way under the normal underdog, like low teens. Normally we see the underdogs come in the mid 20s, the 30s. So, I mean, no one wants to play Santos here. He's going to be super low owned, as the odds indicate. I mean, he has a 13% implied chance to get a finish. I think the ownership's going to be right around there. Not a lot of leverage to be gained, but I think his chances of winning are like 5% or something. So, I mean, normally we'd look at that 12% dog and we'd get excited about playing that in tournaments. I don't think that's the spot here. I mean, he's been 8 straight rounds of doing nothing. I mean, if you look at the Rakic fight, you look at the Johnny Walker fight, I mean, just absolutely nothing for 8 straight rounds. I mean, really, really tough to watch his fights lately. So, I mean, get ready for a fun one. But I think we got a lot of other good fights on the card. But the takeaway is it's really hard to play Ankalaev when he's the most expensive fighter in the slate, and you have Thiago Santos who only absorbs in the low 2s for significant strikes per minute. I think it's gonna be hard to get a lot of striking volume. I think the way Ankalaev can put up a big score is if he incorporates more wrestling, which he normally shoots for a few takedowns. In all of his fights that have made it past the first round, he's generally shooting for a few takedowns. He normally lands at least one. Santos has a decent takedown defense. We saw Glover beat him up on the mat. I think that's the way that Ankalaev really goes off. He's not going to put up a big striking total. He's not going to be one of these guys that goes 5 rounds and puts up 150, 180 significant strikes. So he's relying on a finish, or he's reliant on turning this into a grappling match. But if we see it go like Santos's last couple fights, no one's going to score well here. So, I mean, the floor here is really low. The ceiling is lower. So I'm not very excited about playing either of these guys in high-risk contests. In low risk, I think Ankalaev is still probably fine just because he's so safe. You look at him, he's a negative 650 favorite. If you're trying to lock in some points, lock in a win, he still makes sense in low risk. But I don't think you have to play this fight in high risk. I think you can kind of treat it as if it were a 3-round fight, essentially. opposed to feeling like you need a piece in high risk contests.
I think that makes a ton of sense, especially for the lowered ceiling aspect and Ankalaev's price. And even if Santos somehow miraculously pulls off this win, the way he's been fighting and the way some of these dogs project on this card doesn't even mean he'll be in the optimal lineup. So I think there's merit to not playing a ton of this fight in your tournament lineups. Now, I have the DraftKings screen up here on the video, and the three fighters that I have in the lineup on here are Ankalaev, McKinney, and Jackson, three of the staples of a low risk lineup for this upcoming week. Jackson, because he's mispriced, and you can read about that in the daily plug. And the McKinney, Jake, we have to talk about if we're going to discuss this slate, just because of his insane run and his ownership. When he made his debut, knocked out Favola in 7 seconds, whatever it was, he was only 25%, 25, 30%. And then we get him as the highest 3-round dog of all time in his last fight, and he naturally gets a first round finish. And now I can't imagine he's that much lower at 7,200 when people look at his DraftKings scores. But I'll preface this by saying you and I are big McKinney fans. We loved him coming in. We loved his prospects and his DFS scoring potential in his debut. But now he's making another short notice contest. And we've seen him get finished before, and we know the types of fights that he goes into. This is a perfect leverage spot. But if you're playing low risk contests, you have to play McKinney because of the ownership block, because of how highly owned he's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. How could you not play, a guy that's going to be potentially easily above 40%? Last time he was 56% or something 2 weeks ago. I mean, the guy just fought. So, I mean, you want to talk about recency bias. People were already on him. Then he gets another first round finish, his fifth in a row, all of those within half a round. I mean, just nutty. I'm really interested to see where his ownership ends up. Where do you go from 56%? Now we're on a 14 fight slate, pretty large. I mean, Dober has respect. People don't hate Dober. I mean, people know he's good, but God, the recency bias on McKinney is going to be out of control. So, yeah, I think he was in the low 20s when we first played him against Favola. Most people didn't know about him. We got ahead early, and now we're just like, oh, well, he can't keep doing it forever, and he just keeps doing it. He keeps ruining just everyone in the first round. It's insane, man. But this is definitely his toughest matchup. I mean, you look at Faris Ziem, he's a kickboxer, didn't have any grappling. I mean, you look at Dober, like Islam Makhachev, it took him 3 rounds to submit Dober. Benil Dariush, it took him 2 rounds to submit Dober. So, I mean, Dober's had issues with grapplers, but they haven't been getting him out of there immediately like McKinney does. And we've yet to see McKinney's cardio. So, normally these guys that get all the first round finishes, they don't have great cardio. You go back, you look at the Contender Series fight against Sean Woodson. McKinney was starting to slow down, caught a flying knee and gets knocked out early in round 2. I mean, would that be at all surprising if that's what happened here with Dober?
No, absolutely not. But I like your trend. Makachev in round 3 and Dariush in round 2. It means McKinney in round 1 is how that trend goes. So, all right, let's move on. Let's talk about some newcomers, and let's bring up the Occupy model. At OccupyFantasy.com ranks every fighter of FanDuel and DraftKings. Projected ownership. Jake, we have 3 fighters making their debut. Let's make this quick. Let's talk about their background and what we can expect from them in their first trip to the Octagon. And we'll start from the highest price to the lowest price. And we have Mirzakhanov, Azmat Mirzakhanov, who was scheduled to make his debut like a million times. Even as recently as a month ago, finally is fighting in this fight against Chukwi. What can we expect from him?
Yeah, man, this guy has been aging to death on the UFC shelf. He was supposed to make his debut in 2017. Then he withdraws, gets busted by USADA for a 2-year suspension. And he's only fought 3 times since then, and 2 of them were on the same night back in a 2019 open weight tournament where he took on a heavyweight and he took on a former middleweight that was fighting up at 212. And the fight against the heavyweight's the only time he's been to a decision in his last 7 or 8 fights. So, I mean, he's finishing everyone in round 1 except for the guy that, came in weighing in the 250s. So, I mean, he's 10-0, 8 finishes, 8 of those in round 1, 7 knockouts, 1 submission. He's only been to 2 decisions, and those are both 2-round fights. So he's never been in a fight that lasted longer than 10 minutes. So we don't really know what his cardio is going to look like late. I mean, this guy is 35. If you look at him, he looks like he's about 45. But he's a former Russian SWAT team member. He's a master in hand-to-hand combat. He's a multi-Russian champion, European champion.
That's a scary resume. God damn.
Yeah, man, this is the guy that shows up and like murders people, and then you never see him again. Like, you would not want to be on this guy's bad side. He also has a win over Andre Muniz.
Yeah.
Like super dangerous grappler.
He destroyed him, by
And
the way, in that fight. He
oh,
destroyed
he
Muniz.
absolutely murdered him. Yeah, Muniz never even had a chance to shoot for a takedown. I mean, he
No.
just killed him. And Mirzakhanov, he's a really good striker, but he does have some wrestling too. So it's not like he's just a one-dimensional striker. But easily the most experienced and the oldest guy making his debut here, and I think he's interesting, and I think it could go a few different ways, but he is insanely dangerous in the first round.
For sure. And having multiple paths to victory certainly helps that matter. Another one making their debut that we're high on is Basharat, Javid Basharat. He's fighting Trevin Jones. What are your thoughts on Basharat?
Yeah, so another guy coming in with an undefeated record. He's 11-0, 11 finishes. The only time he's ever been past the second round was in his recent Contender Series fight, where he got a late guillotine choke to win, like late in the third round. 5 KOs, 6 submissions. The one thing I question about him is only 3 of his 11 opponents have had winning records. Some of the other ones had kind of like 500 records, but he hasn't faced the toughest competition. So I think this is going to be like a big step up for him in the UFC. So, I mean, sometimes we see those guys, they just, they're still great. Other times they fall on their face. I kind of want to see this guy fight once in the UFC. I think Trevin Jones is like a pretty good matchup for him. Trevin Jones isn't a world beater. He's coming off a submission loss, but he's also not a guy that you're just going to like roll over and walk on. So Basharat, Taekwondo background, also has some grappling. He looks like he's a DFS friendly fighting style, grappling, high pace. He's a pretty interesting prospect here.
Absolutely. And then the final prospect making their debut, apparently it's a requirement now. He is also undefeated, AJ Fletcher. He'll be fighting Maryland's own Matthew Semmelsberger. What are your thoughts on Fletcher?
Yeah, so I mean, literally all these guys are undefeated. It's pretty crazy. So Fletcher's coming in 9-0, 8 finishes, 6 in round 1, 4 knockouts, 4 submissions. He'll mix in a lot of wrestling, a little bit undersized for 170. I feel like if he wanted to, he could get down to 155. He actually has one fight down there. So kind of a size difference in this matchup, considering Semmelsberger used to fight at light heavyweight as an amateur, and then at 185, and now at 170. Considerable size advantage. The other thing about Fletcher is he only turned pro in 2019, so he's not the most experienced guy. He's still pretty green, like way less experienced than all these other guys making their debut. Decent wrestling. He trains with Dustin Poirier, who's actually going to be in his corner for this fight, which I thought was sort of interesting. But I think overall I'm the least excited about Fletcher. I mean, as the odds indicate, he's the one that's an underdog, so I think the odds makers got it right. I just think he's too raw. I'm not sure if he's ready to take on, I'm not going to say he's not ready to take on anyone in the UFC, but I don't think he's ready to take on Semmelsberger. People talk a lot of trash about Semmelsberger because he hasn't really fought many people, but I still think he's going to run through Fletcher. But we'll see. Fletcher's a little cannonball.
If Fletcher wins, does he put up a good score?
Yeah, I mean, he's got his wrestling style would definitely put up a good score. I mean, all of his wins have come by finish except for one. Semmelsberger doesn't really have much grappling. If Fletcher can get him down, good chance he can control him on the mat, potentially get a submission. He's got a high ceiling. I just don't trust his floor.
I think that's fair. That's very fair. All right, let's talk about 1 or 2 fights that we want to target in DFS. Not in the same lineup, of course, but if you're playing multiple lineups, you want to look at both fighters in the fight to play. Jake, I think the obvious one has to be Alex Pereira and Bruno Silva. Is that fight one you're looking to target? Are you under the field? Are you going to match the field? And is there another fight that you think has similar upside?
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious one. I don't think you don't want to be over there. So I think you either want to match or be slightly under. But yeah, I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Like, oh yeah, target the fight with the highest chance of ending early. Obviously the Dober McKinney one, I think that's another obvious one. Although I think the trick there is to be over on Dober and under on McKinney,
Yes.
whereas the field's gonna have twice as much, maybe 3 times as much McKinney compared to Dober. I mean, that's an easy one to target. Like, how I say it every week. How does the winner there not score well? And then we
And then
see a
it's a staring match
contest.
for 3 months, for 3 rounds. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, there's several fights on this card that you could say are good fights to target. I mean, the Basharat Jones fight's a good fight to target. The Dalcha Brundage is kind of a sneaky one. I mean, Brundage has wrestling upside. I mean, the Mirzakhanov and Chukwe fight. I mean, we've seen Chukwe score well in 2 decisions so far. So I mean, he doesn't even need finish necessarily to put up 100 DraftKings points. Now he's cheap. So
True.
I think there's a lot of interesting fights. I mean, the Kirk Jackson fight, like I'll just name them all on the slate. But dude, there's tons of fights to target on the slate. So with 14 fights, I think it's a really interesting tournament slate because people are not gonna feel comfortable with their levels of exposure because you just can't get as much exposure as you would like to everyone.
Absolutely. And they're going to be drawn to names that they know, like McKinney, and they're going to be drawn to the main event, especially the favorite, Ankalaev. And the fact that there are 14 fights and the fact that there are so many that have high ceilings, this is another reason we think that the main event could get left out of the winning lineup in tournaments. So, Jake, let's close out the show. Let's talk about our stream parlay of the week. I'll pick a side. You can pick a side. Jake puts his best bets in the daily plug at OccupyFantasy.com. He puts all of his bets over on Patreon and on MMADFS.com if you want his top plays. So I'll pick one of those. Jake will pick one. We'll put them together and we'll win the people some money. I'm going to start with, I know we talked about Ankalaev a lot. I like his, I think it's on FanDuel, to win in round 4, round 5, or a decision. That's plus 100. Pretty safe bet, so I'll let you take the risky side.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too risky this week. Maybe we can actually, hit one here. I'm going to go Aldrich decision. That line just doesn't make any sense. It's plus 215. You look at her money line. Her money line's like plus 110. She never finishes anybody. 9 of her last 10 fights have gone the distance, and the one that didn't was a TKO loss to Macy Barber. I mean, that line should be like plus 130. So at plus 215, I got to go Aldrich decision here for the value. And if we pair those together,
Jake, I didn't
that
know
should
you're.
be.
I didn't know you're on UFC betting Twitter #value team. I didn't know that was you were a part of that.
Man, dude, if I see a value bet like that, I'm definitely taking it, man. Plus 530 for those two.
We will take that. And that's not even that very high risk. I think that's a very good bet. 5-1 odds. Check out our partner sportsbooks, which you see on screen in the daily plug. Go to OccupyFantasy.com. Check out the deposit bonuses if you live in a legal sports betting state. That'll do it for the show. We appreciate you all listening. Be sure to check out Jake's work at MMADFS.com. Read the sheet, which breaks down every fight and fighter on the card from a betting and DFS perspective. Check out Jake's premium work on his Patreon, where he has a bunch of other great content for you to check out. It's fantastic. Jake also does the daily plug, which you see on screen here, the top plays for FanDuel and DraftKings, lineup specific strategies for each contest, as well as his best bets, and our Occupy model, which you saw on screen, ranks every fighter of FanDuel and DraftKings with projected ownership, and use our lineup builder that I've used to win multiple tournaments, helps you build up to 150 lineups using our optimal lineup criteria. That'll do it. Follow Jake on Twitter at DFS_MMA. Follow me at Brian Jester FF. Make sure you are subscribed here on YouTube. Less than half our viewers who watch our videos are subscribed. It makes zero sense. If you like what we do, you want to make sure you get notified whenever we produce a video. So click that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Any comments, you can always comment on the video. We'll try to get back to you. But Discord is the way to go. Click join below the video. Come chat it up with the OccupyFantasy.com community in our Discord server. Jake, I'm Brian. Thanks for listening, and good luck on Saturday.